Hello, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. The assassination of Rabbi Meir Kahane is a shock to the Jewish world. For those that criticized him and those that looked up to him, his words left an impression that will last for lifetimes. Rabbi Meir Kahane was assassinated, and all we have of him now are his writings, films, and tapes of what he said. This interview that I did with him was in 1984, and there, debating Mohammed T. Mehdi, he expressed his ideology as well as any other time. Rabbi Meir Kahane, who is now not in this world, we share you his thoughts and his ideas on our program. Civilization began. The Middle East, in the nuclear age, where it is feared that there it may all end. The Middle East, 4,000 years of turmoil that began with two brothers named Isaac and Ishmael. Two brothers who have struggled with each other over 4 millennia. The names have been changed from Yitzchak ben Avraham to Yitzchak Shamir, from Ishmael ben Avraham to Hafez Assad. But the conflict remains the same. Down through the tunnel of time, the brothers attempted accommodation, but all too often there was bloodshed. Each killed the other in the name of the same God. Ishmael calling him Allah, and Isaac calling him Elohim. 50 years ago, few would have noticed, and even less would have cared about the age-old struggle. But today, when Islamic fundamentalism clashes with an escalating Jewish militancy, and the stakes of the world's oil supply, and in the age of Armageddon, mankind's very existence, time is fast running out for a solution. Our guests today are not men who are known for middle-of-the-road answers. Each calls for the dissolution of what the other believes sacred. Both have made a stunning impact on the world political scene. They are here today to debate solutions to a crisis that may well affect every one of us. Rabbi Meir Kahane is founder of the Jewish Defense League and head of the Kach Party in Israel. He has called for the removal of the Arabs from the state of Israel. Dr. Mohammed T. Mehdi is Secretary General of Arab People to American People. He has the support of numerous Arab governments, and he has called for the disbanding of the State of Israel. Hello, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, along with Zev Brenner. This program will reflect the classic extreme opposing views on a solution to the conflict in the Middle East. Each one of these men represents people who live and breathe the ideology they express. There are some of them who are even willing to die for it. Whatever you're doing now, don't miss this program. Your friends who see it will be talking about it for a long time. We'll be back after the following messages. If you just tuned in, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak. Our program is in memorial to the late Rabbi Meir Kahane. He was the founder of the Jewish Defense League in America and the founder of the Kach Party in Israel. He served a 4-year term in the Knesset. In his short life of 58 years, he was known for his brilliant writing and his books, and also for the rather caustic remarks he made as a critic of the Jewish establishment, as well as the remarks he made about throwing the Arabs out of Israel, in his words. Meir Kahane made a lot of friends, probably made even more enemies. His death in a Manhattan hotel shocked the world, but frankly, it was not unexpected. There are those who have said that Meir Kahane was a dead man the first time he took a bat to defend Jewish interests in a declining neighborhood. Perhaps that's true,
There are some that say he must have had a death wish to take the chances that he took. No one can say. Only the Almighty knows what was in the heart and mind of Meir Kahane. We do know that he was an articulate man and a man who made an impact on the world and instilled Jewish pride in many, many of his brothers and sisters. This is a memorial to Meir Kahane. This is a debate that he had in 1984 on my program with Mohammed T. Mehdi, who was a militant Arab agitator, as Rabbi Kahane would call him. The two might have been friends off camera, but they certainly were hostile to each other on camera. We now take you back to 1984 and the words of Rabbi Meir Kahane in my interview with him.
He said, "You are very much like a flame and he is very much like a moth." And he, the moth, is attracted to this very charming flame and is tempted to go right into it. But he's afraid of what will happen. Indeed, you are a very, very articulate and charming spokesman for your cause. And before our audience is totally charmed by you, I think they should understand that you have a lot of power in America now. You have a lot of backing from many Arab countries, and if we could look on our screen, I'd like to show our audience the first example of your power. This is the late Senator Frank Church. Senator Frank Church from Idaho was a man who got the Arab list of boycotted businesses because they did business with Israel, and he made that public. Now, you, Dr. Mehdi, went to Idaho to campaign for the Arab-backed opponent, or the opponent of Frank Church. And here, from a newspaper article, if we look at the screen again, we will see that on this newspaper article, the Jewish community was very troubled by the fact that you were there and that you had a lot of influence. We also see from this that you are mentioned in this, that you went to in 1982 Idaho to campaign for Senator Frank Church, against Senator Frank Church, and it says here Dr. Mehdi of New York, a spokesman, has gone to Idaho to influence the election, which you did. And this charming man, Dr. Mehdi, to whom I'm speaking, is responsible, according to many political analysts, for the defeat of a United States Senator, Senator Frank Church. That's a pretty powerful thing for someone who looks so innocent and so charming and so innocuous in what he could do. Am I correct?
Rabbi, may the open society be always open. Let me start by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Shalom aleichem.
And Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi Kahane and Zev. Assalamu alaikum. Because I was very grateful to you when you started saying that we may have some peace. Talk about peace. And so what else can we have better to unite us all with this? Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Back to your presentation concerning Frank Church. Church was a brilliant man, a man who was humanist, civil libertarian, except when it came to the Arabs, he became bigoted, intolerant.
Did you live in Louisiana for a while?
Oh, it is worse there.
No, you said Arabs. We don't say that up here in the north. We usually say Arabs.
Frank Church did.
Oh, okay.
Frank Church did. And we felt that his position in Idaho was to the detriment of the United States, and in the open society we have the right to take different positions, and did our best to bring about his defeat. It was not so much love for his opponent, but a disappointment with his records.
But the point is well taken then, that you do represent a view which has the power to defeat, bring down United States senators.
I hope so.
Well, it seems that way. Zev?
Dr. Mehdi, amplifying what Rabbi Spivak mentioned, how effective is the Arab lobby in this country today, which you represent? Again, in the newspapers and the media, we see more and more, we see a more organized campaign to discredit Israel on college campuses, using radio, using television to discredit the Jewish state, Israel. We even see movies that are being boycotted. I'd like to know how effective and what your role is in this campaign.
My role is to increase this effectiveness, and this effectiveness is indeed increasing with time, I have no doubt. I was discussing with Rabbi Kahane earlier and said that President Reagan, the anti-communist, today is in China overlooking Formosa. Israel is America's Formosa in 4 or 5 years. America will forget about Israel. Israel will become a piece of no use.
Dr. Mehdi, do you have any plans or have ever been in the state of Israel?
No, they have refused letting me go there. I have applied and they have denied me the opportunity of going there.
To settle or to visit?
No, to visit.
To visit.
I want to settle in America. This is the love land of mine.
You know, Rabbi Kahane goes around the world warning people, especially in America, about the Arab influence in this country and how it's rising. I think that if you ought to go with him on his trips, because you certainly make a very good case for it. You know, people will obviously say, well, it's exaggerated, but obviously it is not. And that brings us to our second guest. And he is, of course, Rabbi Meir Kahane, and we'd like to tell you a little bit about him with the aid of our slides. He is the chairman of the Jewish Defense League and the head of the Kach Party in Israel. The first slide, which we'd like to show you, is of a book that came out in 1970. It's called Never Again. It was a bestseller. What Rabbi Kahane was able to do with this book was to capture the anger that the Jewish people in America and indeed around the world felt at the helplessness of the Holocaust. And he swore, one of the things that he swore was, never again would Jews be led to the slaughter like they were. And beginning in 1968, with the formation of the Jewish Defense League, Rabbi Kahane indeed captured the imagination of Jewish youth, and the JDL grew to great proportions, and with youngsters demonstrating for Soviet Jewry, demonstrating against anti-Semitism in local communities in New York, and the sign Le'olam La'od, never again, which Rabbi Kahane coined in relation to the JDL, became famous around the world. As a matter of fact, Jews in the Soviet Union have only heard of a few American Jews, and Rabbi Meir Kahane is one of them. Here are some demonstrations in the early 70s of JDLers who demonstrated for Soviet Jewry. They also went to jail when they had to, some of them spending a good bit of time in jail, as did their leader, Rabbi Kahane. Rabbi Kahane is also known for his book, Why Be Jewish? This is not necessarily in the chronological order, but in order to give you an idea of some of his philosophies, in which he argued against the Bridget and Bernie concept of intermarriage, and he tried to and successfully instilled Jewish pride, not only in Orthodox Jews, of which he is an Orthodox rabbi, but Jews across the board, Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and unaffiliated. Many of them were very touched by this book. Of course, he wrote Time to Go Home, in which he called on American Jewry to leave America and to go back to Israel. We will discuss whether this causes any problems to Dr. Mehdi, but looking at Rabbi Kahane now, I don't see a expression of great concern on his face. Anyway, there was another book which Rabbi Kahane wrote. He spoke all over the country, and the book that is the most controversial, of course, is his book, They Must Go, in which he calls for the removal of the Arabs from the state of Israel. Flat out, no question about it. He says they must go. Dr. Mehdi, on the other hand, says that when he thinks of the state of Israel as a democratic state, as a political state, he also says they must go. So they are not in agreement.
He said they must stay.
But the
Jews who are there must stay.
But the political state of Israel you don't want.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in his article in the New York Times, Rabbi Kahane has also discussed the fact that the Jews must, that the Arabs must leave Israel, and he has many followers around the world. But in all fairness, not everyone thinks that Rabbi Kahane is right. As a matter of fact, in the Jerusalem Post, we find this article that compared what Rabbi Kahane said to, well, you can see the name there. I'm sure that Rabbi Kahane will have a comment on that, and Dr. Mehdi must have something to say about that. There have been also those who have criticized Rabbi Kahane. Rabbi Meir Kahane, for the last 15 years, a great effect on the average Jew in the street, as well as many Jews in power. I want to welcome you to the program, Rabbi Kahane. It is indeed an honor to have you here. You will, as an editor of a paper and someone who has his own radio programs when he has the time, understand that because of the long introduction that we did give you, we are going to have to let our audience take all this in through a commercial, and we'll be back to talk to Rabbi Kahane, as we did with Dr. Mehdi, coming up right after the following messages.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and we're offering you a memorial program on Rabbi Meir Kahane. I first met Rabbi Kahane at my wedding. In 1969, there was this 36-year-old man who my wife's family knew, and they invited him to the wedding because he was a teacher in the local Hebrew school at that time. And no one had ever heard of Martin David Kahane. He was a rabbi in Queens. He was a bright law student, or had already gotten his law degree, but never practiced law. And he was writing for the Jewish press, very active with the youth. Suddenly, when the 60s got violent and the upheavals of those years really turned the eyes and ears of the press towards those who had the courage to speak out, Meir Kahane became an international hero for Jewish youth. And the man that I had seen at my wedding suddenly was now on the front pages of all the papers around the world. He was a hero to Russian Jews. He started the activist movement in America and marched on the Soviet embassy and the Soviet consulate, and always inspired kids to speak out. Meir Kahane was first arrested in 1947 at the age of 15 when he threw rocks at a British consulate's car in America, and in the hopes that Britain would allow Israel to become a state. It was the first of many arrests for Meir Kahane and many beatings. Now he is at rest. Now the beatings have stopped, the persecutions have stopped, the jailings have stopped, and also we have lost a brilliant orator. Meir Kahane, a man who we now bring you in a 1984 interview and debate with Mohammed T. Mehdi. His words still inspire, and they still are very important.
I've always said that one must recognize the Palestinians and the Arabs for what they are. The fact of the matter is that when one calls for a democratic, secular Palestine, what he's really calling for is the end of the Jewish state. I am a Zionist. I want a Jewish state. I don't believe that Jews should live as a minority. Therefore, I want a Jewish state which is not threatened by a minority which grows and grows and grows, and which aims at turning that Jewish state into a Palestine. My point is quite simply that given the Arab birth rates within the state of Israel, without war, within 30, 40, 50 years, the Arab birth rate will create a de facto Palestine state. Now, I am not about to lose my state to bullets or to babies. And Dr. Mehdi may love America, and I think it's a great country too, and it's a great place to visit. But I don't want to live here. I want to live in my country, my Jewish state. I don't want to live under Arabs. We have had not such fond memories of what it is to live under Arabs. Therefore, may the Arabs live in their countries, all 22 of them. May there be 23 tomorrow. And let us live in our one country, and that is exactly what is going to happen. And whether Ronald Reagan wants to go to Taiwan or to communist China, God bless him, it is not relevant to the state of Israel. We will survive with Ronald Reagan or without Ronald Reagan.
But you cannot survive without America. And sooner or later, America and the American people and the American Jews will not accept this kind of narrow thinking which has led to wars and will continue lead to permanent wars. So there has to be some change. And on my part, as you notice, I recognize the right of the Jews to stay there, all of them, including, and I agree with Rabbi Kahane, if American Jews want to go there, let them go. I recognize the right, but I also say the Palestinians have the right to be in their place. Let us recognize the human need of all the parties and work from that point of view to bring peace and justice for all.
So Dr. Mehdi, what kind of a state do you envision in what's now called Israel?
I envisage a democratic state. I'm against Muslim states, all of them.
But which Arab country would lead as an example for such a democratic state?
None of them. None of them. But this doesn't mean that we cannot have a new experiment, a new pattern.
Dr. Mehdi, you have always been much more honest than now. Let's not talk about Muslims. Let us talk about Arabs. You want Palestine as an Arab state in which Jews can live freely. Now we have that in Brooklyn. It isn't an Arab state. It is a non-Jewish state in which Jews live as a minority. That is what you are advocating. We're not interested in that. Thank you, but no thanks. The fact of the matter is that what has caused wars in the region has not been Zionism. It has been the fact that Arabs have killed Jews. It has not been the 67 boundaries, as foolish Jews say. Because in 1947, when there were no 67 boundaries, you Arabs went to war. And I understand you. You see, I am one of those few Jews that does not hold Arabs in contempt. I understand you. You understand me. I understand that you believe that Israel is a robber state. It is a robber state. It has taken Arab land away. I understand you.
And you agree with that?
No, of course not. But you're wrong. But you're wrong.
But that
and
is
therefore,
precisely the case.
And therefore, I certainly have not come here or never come anywhere to debase myself on discussing whether we Jews have a right to Israel. It is our state. I'm not here to debate that. If you like it, fine. If not, you can continue for the next 50 years to have your Arab group here, because I can assure you, you will be here for 50 years.
We're debating how we can bring
No.
peace.
No.
Our
That's not true.
experiences of the past have been failures. And I suggest that it's about the time for us to grow up, to grow out of our mishigas, to grow out of our paranoia, and see if we can examine the issues in new light.
Dr. Mehdi, Yiddish words will not change the point. The point is that you don't want peace, you want the end of Israel. What you are doing now is a clever Arab ploy. After the 6-day war, when you saw you can't physically wipe out Israel, suddenly we began to hear this soothing lullaby. So you are playing, and the Arabs are playing, good guy, bad guy. And you have been given the role of the good guy. But the problem is that I have played this game also. The fact is that I wish you well in your efforts. But let me say one thing. You made a very important point saying that Israel needs America. It's not true. You are not a religious person. Chaval, it's a pity. That's a Hebrew word, which means a pity. It's a pity. I am a religious person, and I believe that the Jewish people is God's people, and that the land of Israel is God's land. And so there is nothing that you can do, or Ronald Reagan can do, or cannot do. The fact of the matter is that Israel is here to stay.
Yeah, you see, this kind of messianic complex that you may have reflects some of your own mishigas, shall we say again. But really, this does not impose any obligation on the rest of us to believe in this supernatural kind of thinking that the Jews are God's children. If there is a God, we all are his children. Mm-hmm. And to say that the Jews are his children and the rest of us are not, this will be a racist God and will not be the God that I can worship. So this irrelevant thing will not really solve the problem. The problem is that the European and American Jews have occupied Palestine. The Palestinians don't like it. I'm suggesting that let's accommodate for the need of the Jews to be in Palestine and forever, and the right of the Palestinians to be in the area. Now, they will have conflicts, problems, but I'm suggesting that their social problems will be less damaging than permanent war.
Let me ask you a question, Dr. Mehdi. You talk about Rabbi Kahane's messianic chosen people concept, and you would rather see it under Arab rule.
No, under a democratic rule.
I'm very careful what I'm speaking about for two reasons with you gentlemen. Dr. Mehdi, aside from being a spokesman, is also a professor of political science. And Rabbi Kahane, aside from being an ordained Orthodox rabbi, also has a graduate degree in international law, if I'm correct. So I'm not going to get into those areas as an expert, which I'm not. You gentlemen will debate that. But what I'm trying to understand is it not true, Dr. Mehdi, that under Muslim, the Quran, the world is divided into two things: that which Islam has conquered, and that which Islam is yet to conquer. So you're here speaking about a democratic country and speaking about Arab rule, but wouldn't the concept that you would want in Israel, which would be under an Arab democratic state, wouldn't that be anathema to the very guts of what the Muslims believe?
Exactly. But that is not, at least this Muslim believes.
Yeah, but in other words, you would like to be president of Palestine?
No. You see, your interpretation of Islam of 1,000 years ago is really not acceptable by the majority of the people today. In certain in certain areas it is, and in those areas it is being denounced by other people.
Well,
at any rate, in the Palestine,
what about the people on the other side of the Western Wall and the minarets? They don't believe that?
What they want is the right of the Palestinians in the first place
but
to
they
their
also
land.
believe that, do they not also believe, these devout Muslims who worship on the other side of the Western Wall, a few hundred feet from the Western Wall in the site of the Jewish Holy Temple, the Mosque of Omar, don't they believe that the world is divided into that which Islam has conquered and that which Islam is yet to conquer?
Rabbi, no. At least we know that the Christian Arabs don't believe in this. And the Muslim Arabs of it, this was a theoretical belief of 1,000 years ago. Today it has been changed. Just as within the Jewish law, for example, an eye for an eye. Today, if I go to you as a rabbi or to Rabbi Kahane, do you believe in an eye for an eye? You say no.
We never believe that, Dr. Mehdi.
Well, whatever.
We have a Talmud of 2,000 years that doesn't believe that.
Societies change, and to cling to something old stated and make it relevant today is misunderstanding of the
But Dr. Mehdi, we mentioned before, you said there is no example today for an Arab government that you envision. What makes you say that thousands of years of Arab mentality will change overnight and be such a state that you envision?
I didn't say overnight. I said this is a gradual process. We have to try from the beginning, recognizing the right of the Jews to stay there, the right of the Palestinians to be there, and gradually over 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, to work for a democratic
I hope
experiment.
Lebanon is not an example of currently what's going on.
We are going to come back to hear what Rabbi Kahane thinks that Dr. Mehdi's plan is feasible and can be implemented. I have a hunch, I know what he's going to say, but we will leave it to him. We'll be back with our guests, Dr. Mohammed T. Mehdi and Rabbi Meir Kahane, after the following messages.
I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and this program is a memorial to Rabbi Meir Kahane, the founder of the Jewish Defense League in America and the Kach Party in Israel. Now, you've probably heard and will continue to hear some rather critical remarks by Rabbi Kahane on the part of the Jewish establishment and on the part of general political leaders, and this did not gain him a lot of friends. At his funeral, a lot of people who criticized him came to pay their respects. At first, I thought it was hypocritical. I wonder if a lot of the things that Meir Kahane said publicly, many Jews thought privately, but could not say. At least you knew what was on his mind and in his heart. At least he was honest about how he felt. And that is the thing that is going to make him, I think, into a martyr. Perhaps Meir Kahane, by dying at the hand of an assassin's bullet, did more to sway the general Jewish populace to his point of view than all of his rhetoric during his lifetime. It's very sad, you know, to think of the fact that a man can talk to us and not get his point across. And when he dies and we can't hear him anymore, we become sympathetic to his point of view. I did not and do not agree with everything that Meir Kahane said. But I do think that what he had to say was worth listening to. On the day he died, he gave a list to Rabbi Shalom Klass, the publisher of the Jewish Press, of all the synagogues that would not allow him to speak. The greatest tribute we can give to him is allow him to come into your home and to speak to you. You may or may not agree with him, but at least you'll know what an intelligent mind, what a great mind had to say. And in this period of time in our lives, we need as many different opinions as we can get.
Welcome back. I'm Zev Brenner along with Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and our special guest is Rabbi Meir Kahane, founder of the Jewish Defense League, as well as head of the Kach political movement in Israel, and Dr. Mohammed T. Mehdi, Secretary General of the Arab People to the American People. Before the break, Rabbi Kahane, we were speaking to Dr. Mehdi about the feasibility of establishing a so-called democratic state in what is now is Israel. And Dr. Mehdi made certain points about changing the Arab experience gradually and having such a state where it does not exist today and has never existed in Arab culture for thousands of years. Rabbi Kahane, what is your response to Dr. Mehdi?
I think that what is being done, in, of course, a deliberate fashion, we are throwing around different concepts. The problem is not whether in Islam it says this or it doesn't say it. Of course it does say it. And when Dr. Mehdi says it does not say it, then of course he is not. He is playing fast and loose with the truth.
Not in my
That's
interpretation
true,
of Islam.
In other words, if that's true, then you are as unrepresentative of Islam as I am. In any case, the question here is not the question of Muslims. The question is of Arab nationalism, whether they are Muslims or Christians or atheists. What Dr. Mehdi is cleverly saying, and of course it's a clever thing, which goes over well with Jewish liberals in Great Neck. What he is saying is, let both Arabs and Jews flow into the country. Now, quite obviously, he knows that more Arabs will therefore flow into the country. And he knows that de facto it will be automatically an Arab state. In other words, that this new state, whether it be called, let it be called Disneyland, whatever it will be called, will have a majority of Arabs and Jews living there as a minority, precisely as in all the countries before Zionism. Dr. Mehdi, let us stop this nonsense. You may go over well with a Hadassah group, but not with me. The fact of the matter is that we created in Israel to be for a Jewish state because we don't trust you. Now, I don't know how more blunt I can possibly be. We don't trust you who killed Jews in Morocco and killed Jews in Yemen and killed Jews in Iraq, and you are from Iraq. And we, of course, we know about the Rashid Ali massacres of hundreds of Jews in 1941, not in 1850, not in the year 1200, in 1941, when a pro-Nazi government arose in Iraq, your former country. So spare me Rashid Ali's, and spare me Christians and Muslims. I want a Jewish state, and there's going to be a Jewish state, and for the next 50 years, you'll be on TV programs with your plan.
Rabbi Kahane, I have been listening to both your description and the description of Dr. Mehdi of what you would like to see. There is now a pretty much democratic state in Israel. Dr. Mehdi would like to see that democratic state of Israel removed and replaced with an Arab-run democratic state in general. All right. So this.
No, don't misrepresent
me. You would like it. You would like to see the democratic state of Israel removed and put in another kind of democratic state. This is what you're saying.
No, let me explain myself.
Okay, all right. I just want to make one point here to Rabbi concerning what Rabbi Kahane said. Here we have Rabbi Kahane, a citizen of a democratic state, and we have Dr. Mehdi, who is from countries that are not democratic. Dr. Mehdi would like to see the democratic state of Israel removed and replaced with another kind of democratic state. You, Rabbi Kahane, have said the following, and this is a quote from you, from the New York Times, or you've said it many, many times, and I quote, Rabbi Meir Kahane, "The very idea of a so-called democratic Jewish state is nonsense. A state can be permanently defined as Jewish or as democratic, but never both." Am I correct in saying that Dr. Mehdi would like to see a democratic state in Israel, replacing the one that's there now, but you, a citizen of the democratic state of Israel, would not like to see a democracy there?
Of course not. What Dr. Mehdi says is not what Dr. Mehdi means. What Dr. Mehdi has done, and he is a brilliant PR person, he knows what plays well in suburbia. He knows what plays well with the American Jews, and he knows that the Israeli weakness is ultimately the American Jew. And he plays on that, because the American Jew is basically liberal, and also guilt-ridden, whereas most people breathe air, Jews tend to breathe guilt. And he is, of course, using this. The fact is that he envisions an Arab state, because he knows that for practical purposes, when the gates are opened wide, there will be more Arabs than Jews. And when that state will be, it won't be a democratic state. It won't be it will be an Arab state, and it will be defined as an Arab state, despite what he says or what he says that he wants it to be. The truth is that at best, it will be a Lebanon. At best. At worst, it will be as every other Arab state.
But Rabbi Kahane, when I read your column in the New York Times and the Jewish press, and you said the very idea of a democratic Jewish state is nonsense.
Of course, yes.
And you said a state can be permanently defined as Jewish or as democratic, but never both. Am I wrong in saying that if you would become Prime Minister of the State of Israel, you would not want a democratic state?
I would not want a Western kind. In short, I want a Jewish state.
A Jewish democratic, not a democratic.
I want a democratic state for all Jews there. I don't want to give voting rights to Arabs.
But what is a state can be permanently defined as Jewish or as democratic,
or as democratic,
but never both.
Of course not, because if you define it as a democratic state, then that means that anyone in there has the right, if he has enough babies, to be a majority.
In other words,
whereas a Jewish state must always be a Jewish state.
Are you referring to a theocracy in addition to that?
Well, that's a separate matter, and of course, yes, certainly, of course, but that's not relevant at this moment. In short, this article was written without any reference. In short, an atheist Jew, and many members of Kach in Israel are atheist leftists who believe that it is vital to save Israel by making it a Jewish state and stopping this nonsense of rights to all peoples and so on to politically change the country.
Rabbi Kahane, we'd like to get back to later. Dr. Mehdi, I believe you have a couple of comments.
Yes, I must say that even though Rabbi Kahane has been a little bit nasty to me in his cracks, he is the most
Are you
decent.
trying to appeal to Jewish guilt again?
No, we are friends enough.
It hasn't bothered Rabbi Kahane as far as I know.
No, of course.
Maybe there's a new book.
We're talking as friends and as open, as frank as people can be. He is the most honest, intellectually consistent, more decent than all the Zionist groups who talk from both sides, ends of their mouth. Jewish and democracy cannot be. It has to be either Jewish or democracy. And the problem with the democracy, as he properly defined it, is that it means that the non-Jews shall have the peaceful right to become majority and make the new government, which the rabbi is against because he is a committed, authentic Zionist. So let's be honest about it and join Rabbi Kahane. We cannot have Israel as a democracy and a Jewish state.
Let me ask you a question. I want to move on to another subject here. Dr. Mehdi, you do a television program as well, and I happened to be in the control booth one day when you had two members of the black community here.
We're not controlling the program.
And you said, where are the? I believe what you had on your program is you had one person from the black community taking the black community's view, and you had one person from the black community taking the Jewish point of view, because you said you couldn't find a Jew to come on your program and debate the program. Now, debate the issue. Now, I came out of the control booth and I said, did anybody call for a Jew? And you found it very funny at the time. That was round two. This is round three. Right. We had a lot of fun. At any rate, let me ask you this. I want to get into that issue because you are appealing to the black community, and from what I understand, you are saying that you have to be one with them in their opposition to certain Zionistic viewpoints. So let us look at what you have to say, if I may. I'm going to have to go a little bit ahead over here in our shots. We'll show you a few shots of these, and then we'll get on to this. Pardon us for a moment. Of Jesse Jackson, Rabbi Kahane, you have said the following in the Jewish World of November 1983. Isn't it nice to have a follower who brings up everything? You said, quote, Jackson is a blatant anti-Semite. He is anti-Israel, he embraced Arafat, and he gives backing to the PLO. You were quoted in the Journal News of April 26th of this year saying, because of Jackson, we now have the most open anti-Semitism among blacks ever. And you also said Jesse Jackson is just bad for America. Now, my question to you, Rabbi Kahane, is, or let's just throw this out to the floor. We know what Rabbi Kahane said. We would like to hear from you, Dr. Mehdi. What is your relationship with the black community, and what are you trying to do? Give us in 1 minute, and then we'll break and get back further. Yes.
I think the black community, part of the majority of the American people, other minorities, all those who have suffered, have community of interest to unite their efforts to change and challenge the traditional racist society. So the hope is that with the challenge of Jesse Jackson, a more humane society will evolve in America.
In other words, you would support Jesse Jackson in his campaign?
We have decided to endorse him because he today represents a challenge to the traditional society and may bring a little bit more hope for the majorities of the people.
Well, we'll find out if Rabbi Meir Kahane has any reaction to this. I don't know. But if you'll stay tuned after our break, we'll find that out. Yaakov Spivak along with Zev Brenner will be back after the following messages.
I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and this program is a memorial to Rabbi Meir Kahane, a good friend of mine, and a man with whom I disagreed on many issues, but agreed solidly on many others. Rabbi Meir Kahane built the Jewish Defense League on the support of Holocaust survivors. It was only about 23 years after the Holocaust that these survivors heard a phrase from Meir Kahane, and that phrase was "never again." And it touched a nerve. It touched the hearts and minds of so many people who had suffered under the Nazis. Never again, said Kahane. No, never again will Jews be marched to Auschwitz. Never again will Jews go obediently to their deaths. And people heard him, and they liked what he had to say. And even though only a handful actually were active with him in his demonstrations, many, many thousands were with him in their hearts. And they helped him, and they cheered him on as he went and stuck his neck out, and eventually put himself in a situation in which he was killed. At this time, it is alleged by an Arab who had backing, or emotional backing, from pro-Palestinian groups.
Welcome back. I'm Zev Brenner along with Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and today we're speaking with Rabbi Meir Kahane, founder of the Jewish Defense League, and Dr. M.T. Mehdi, who is the Secretary General of the Arab people to the American people. Rabbi Kahane, I'd like you to respond. Before we were speaking about when Jesse Jackson ran for the presidency of the United States government, Dr. Mehdi said he would support Jesse Jackson. And Dr. Mehdi, later on we'd like to get back to you on that. And it seems to me that any candidate who's anti-Israel automatically draws support from your group. I would like to touch on that. But first, Rabbi Kahane, I'd like you to respond about the campaign of Jesse Jackson.
I think it's perhaps fitting, historically fitting, that the Arabs should support Jackson, a black candidate, since as the slave traders, they had so much to do with having sent the Jacksons here to this country from Africa. However, what impressed me most about the fact that I don't recall if Dr. Mehdi made any comment about the comment by Louis Farrakhan. I don't recall seeing that. I'm quite sure you came out with an angry protest and demanded that Jesse Jackson drop him. I'm quite sure, though I missed it. I missed it in the AP dispatches. In any case, Jackson is a black anti-Semite, which is no different than a white one. One who is a white anti-Semite is a pig. One who is a black one is a pig. All people are equal for good or for bad. He is bad.
In relationship to what you did say, Rabbi Kahane, I think we ought to take that a step further. Do you have any problem, Dr. Mehdi, with the black community in the sense that even in Arab countries today, in Aramco, there are reports that there is slavery in the fields and there is slave trading, and that the Arabs did, in fact, in 1619, where they were the slave traders that took the blacks out of Africa and sold them as slaves to this country, and that there is slavery today. And do you have any problem with the black community when they ask you as an Arab about that?
I say some Arabs engaged in slavery and they were SOBs, and some tribal chiefs engaged in it and they were SOBs, and some Jewish money was invested in the slave trade, and those Jews who invested their money was SOBs.
That's interesting. You know why,
So
Dr. Mehdi? Because
responsibility-
the blacks were sent to this
Listen.
country in 1619. There wasn't a Jew here till 1654.
Rabbi, there were Jewish money, some in the trade, and those responsible were the bad boys. So I can denounce those Arabs who committed violence. It doesn't bother me. You see, we have to recognize that responsibility is individual. And those guilty Arabs were SOBs. What has that got to do with me?
But Dr. Mehdi, I just want to correct the record. While it's true there might have been a couple of Jewish so-called bad boys at that point in time, but the majority of slave traders at that point in history were not Jews, they were Arabs.
So
If there
they
were
were
one or
bad
two
boys.
Jewish investments, it was one or two, but the majority were Arabs. And I think I want to make
There
that
were
very, very
more
clear.
Arab SOBs than Jewish SOBs.
What about in
does that got to
Aramco?
do
What
with
about
you
the
or me?
reports coming out of Aramco now that there is slavery in the fields,
Mm-hmm.
that they are given that blacks are given checks in Arab countries, and then the checks are taken back.
Mm-hmm.
These are documented reports. You have any reply to that?
Rabbi, if it is true,
I don't know
damn it.
I don't know of any Jews that own slaves today. Anybody in
Rabbi,
Brooklyn?
As far as I know,
I don't think so.
I sold
Rabbi.
my last one a few years
Oh
ago.
well, all right.
So, you see, you are raising things. If it is true with me, I damn them. I damn them publicly. What has that got to do with me? But I want to bring the issue back to a little bit of Rabbi Kahane's, who had a picture of Jackson embracing Arafat
Yes.
as a terrorist.
Yes, well, let's go back to that. Here we go. We just happen to have that right here. We can
And-
look at it while you talk about it.
And I suggest that I have seen Jimmy Carter embracing the major terrorist Menachem Begin. Worse than that, I have seen Menachem Begin embracing a fascist,
Which fascist?
Sadat, Anwar Sadat, the fascist. So what does that make Menachem Begin a fascist because he was embracing a fascist Anwar Sadat? We have to examine issues on the basis of their merits and demerits rather than such. I know President Roosevelt embraced the communist Stalin. Indeed, President Roosevelt gave money and aid to the communist Stalin. Let's discuss issues on the basis of their merits. Now you think that Jackson is anti-Semite because to you, anybody who is against Israel is anti-Semite. To the Anti-Defamation League of Nabreth, anybody who is critical of Israel is anti-Semite.
Oh, no.
They call it
absolutely
new
not.
anti-Semitism.
Dr.
And that
Mehdi,
is
no,
really
no.
not fair.
Dr. Mehdi, you know that is not true. You know that Arafat is first of all, he is not an anti-Semite because he is a Semite. He's a Jew hater. Wait, let me
Jews are not
just.
Semite. You know, you and I know better
Yeah,
that
right.
the word
No,
Semite is a
but
wrong
there
one.
is a difference between someone who is opposed to Israel's policies and someone who, according to the Palestine National Covenant, calls for the destruction of Israel. I am not against Jesse Jackson for embracing Arafat, the terrorist. I'm against him for embracing the man who would destroy this Jewish state. That, and therefore, when Jesse Jackson embraces someone who would wipe out Israel, he is dangerous. He is my enemy. The friend of my enemy is my enemy. And therefore, And of course, I'm not only speaking of his anti-Zionism, I'm speaking of his anti-Jewish comments about Jews, not Zionists, not people in Israel.
Before you respond and to what Rabbi Kahane said, I'd like to know if you embrace the philosophy of Yasser Arafat of the PLO for the destruction of Jews, and what your relationship is to the PLO and to Yasser Arafat and the other splinter groups of the radical Palestinians.
You are reading wrong things and putting them in my mouth.
Well, that's why I'm asking you to clarify that.
Okay. Arafat does not believe in the destruction of the Jews.
Even though his national charter says that.
It does not say. It is your misreading of it. He is for the right of the Palestinians to their land. Now you read that as the destruction of the Jews is your mishigas. Really.
Even if he goes ahead and kills innocent children and Jews and old people.
Each guilty thing has to be evaluated on the basis of its own merits and demerits and condemned.
I don't find any merits.
Now, in the latest bus incident in which the Palestinians hijacked a bus, in a court of law, the Palestinians will be charged with hijacking, and the Israelis will be charged with murder. The Israelis have killed the Palestinians as well as an Israeli woman and injured some 8 or 9 others. So in each case, the Palestinians will be accused of hijacking, the Israelis of murder.
Even though they had an intention of killing, if their demands would not have been met, the only thing you say they would have been charged with hijacking.
Do you know why the Israelis were able to shoot? Because they knew the Arabs do not have that killer instinct. They did not have the ability to shoot. Otherwise, they could have shot all those.
What's that story you tell about
They did not
drinking,
kill them.
drinking
the Israelis have that killer instinct, and that's why they killed.
Which the Arabs never had.
Not never.
And don't have today.
Not never. You see, you are 100%ish. No. In the main, the Israelis have the killer instinct, and that's why they shoot their own. The Arabs, in the main, do not.
Rabbi Kahane?
Dr. Mehdi. In Black September in 1970, when King Hussein massacred thousands of Palestinians, that was not a killer. And I'm not even speaking about what Arabs do to Jews, but what Arabs do to Arabs. And then, that year, in Cairo, when an Arab, a Palestinian as you call him, assassinated the foreign minister of Jordan, and drank his blood on the steps of the hotel. And we have it was a shocking photo. Now, I don't know what you call that, but I would call that a frightening thing.
I haven't heard about it. I haven't seen it. Possibly it is part of your concoction and your creation.
Dr. Mehdi.
Bring it. I have been in this field.
You just said that I am the most
have.
honest, intellectually straight person you have ever met. And here you're
amongst the Jews, and even you are not perfect, happily.
I'm like a little anti-Semitism to solve it.
Isn't it something?
Dr. Mehdi.
Now you have to work on his guilt.
His anti-Arabism has no limits.
I
have
not
a bit of
anti-Arab. Some of my best
Kahane.
friends are Arabs.
Brilliant. Has been heard by other anti-Semites before.
That's true.
Anyway, we are. I'd like to go on to one other subject, Rabbi Kahane, and that is the subject that we have here of, if I may go to the slide board here. We've been through these, and I'm talking about American Jewry. We haven't really said anything much about American Jewry here, and I'd like to ask you about when we come back from the break. A little bit about Aryeh Nair, who, as you, Rabbi Kahane, were in the forefront of the march in Skokie against to march against the Nazis. And Aryeh Nair, in his book "Defending My Enemy," which was done in Nazi colors, incidentally, defends the right of the Nazis to march in Skokie. I'd like to know what you think about American Jewry in that respect, and whether you think there's any hope for American Jewry. We'll be back with Rabbi Meir Kahane, Dr. Mohammed T. Mehdi, after the following messages.
I'm Rabbi Yaakov Spivak, and what you have seen in this hour is Rabbi Meir Kahane in 1984. As we tape this, it's less than 24 hours since his funeral. I have lost a friend. I've lost a person who inspires. And I've lost someone who was a guiding light in many areas, even though I didn't always agree with him. He was Safra and Saifa, as we say in Talmudic language. He was an intellect, a writer, and a swordsman, and an activist. And I want to thank the people who have helped me put this together at a very, very troubling time. I want to thank Frank Labono, Susie Grama, and Pat Murphy, who helped me through a very, very tough remembrance of a good friend. All I can say is that the world will never see another Meir Kahane. And on his epitaph, at least we could say, Meir Kahane, never again.
Rabbi Kahane, if we could get a brief reply to your view of Aryeh Nair and American Jewry, and what you think it is like that Aryeh Nair, an American Jew, defends the rights of Nazis to march in Skokie, especially since Aryeh Nair himself is a survivor of the Holocaust.
Yes, I think that Aryeh Nair is the classic product of 2,000 years of the ghetto, shtetl, exile. One could do a doctoral thesis on the Aryeh Nairs of this world. Nazis have no right to march if they would put me into ovens. And Aryeh Nair is far more dangerous than any Nazi, because I can understand Nazis, I cannot begin to understand Aryeh Nair.
Yes, Aryeh Nair was the head of the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union.
Just briefly, because we are coming to the close of the program, I'd like to know the relationship between yourself, Rabbi Kahane, and Dr. Mehdi. First, let's have 30 seconds with Dr. Mehdi about your special relationship, where you can come on from opposing viewpoints, extreme viewpoints, according to some people, and still speak and be friendly.
Let me say a word about the book and Nair. I think he's a saint of civil libertarians. Like Roger Baldwin's before, he has emancipated himself from the tribalism. He's a human being, universalist, not part of a tribe.
Well, we'll be looking forward to him marching arm in arm with you to disband the State of Israel.
If we are concerned with human rights, civil rights, constitutional issues, he will join with me, of course.
Yes,
now,
yes.
As to my relations with Rabbi Kahane, I think he's a wholesome person, intelligent person, courageous person.
And thank you very much. Rabbi Kahane, any final thought in about 10 seconds that we have?
Dr. Mehdi is certainly a representative Arab, and I'm always ready to be with him.
For Dr. Mohammed T. Mehdi and Rabbi Meir Kahane and Zev Brenner, this is Rabbi Yaakov Spivak saying, Seid gesund, lehitraot, shalom al Yisrael, and most of all, my friend, Chazak.